Women in China contributed to 41% of the country's GDP, higher than the global average, including many developed countries. If they were a nation, their GDP would rank the third largest globally. China is also home to the most self-made female billionaires, 74% of the world's 218 self-made female billionaires. It's almost unthinkable that just 100 years ago, most Chinese women still had their feet bound, a practice that deformed their feet into a size no longer than 4 inches, resembling a lotus flower, which was the beauty standard of the time. And just 50 years ago, many were still being sold into marriage to the highest bidder. How did they go from being deeply oppressed to becoming economic powerhouses? Today, let's uncover the key drivers behind this remarkable progress in women's empowerment in China, and also examine its persistent and emerging challenges. To start with, you have to give some credit to the Communist Party. When the People's Republic of China was founded in 1949, its temporary constitution included Article 6, which was dedicated to women's rights. Women have equal rights with men in all aspects of political, economic, cultural, educational, and social life. This was a big deal. For thousands of years in Chinese history, women suffered from extremely low status under the social code of 3 obediences. A woman was obligated not to act on her own initiatives. She must obey her father before marriage, her husband after marriage, her sons after her husband's death. So the Communist Party in China had its funding largely influenced by Marxist ideology, which advocates for a classless society, emphasized gender equality as part of its broader concept of equality and sameness. Mao Zedong, the chairman of the Communist Party of China at the time, famously proclaimed, "Women hold up half the sky," a statement often quoted in societal campaigns over the decades. While those declarations may have served as political propaganda, they undeniably planted the seeds for change. Women entered the workforce in large numbers, and today, China's female labor market participation is one of the highest in the world at 61%. There is also another government's policy which had unintended consequences on advancing women's status in China, the one-child policy. Introduced in 1979, the policy mandated families to have only one child to control the rapidly growing population. While its intent had nothing to do with gender equality, it inadvertently led to China's, perhaps even the world's first generation of only daughters. And those only daughters didn't have brothers who had been traditionally favored to compete with for resources. And those families had no choice but to invest their hopes, dreams, and resources in their only daughters. What happens when girls have equal access to education? They excel. Studies across the globe have shown that girls on average tend to outperform boys in school. Today, more than half of the college students in China are female, and better education leads to better jobs. China also has more females than males in professional and technical jobs, a ratio higher than global average, including Western Europe. As these women entered the workforce, another transformative factor came into play: the internet and e-commerce boom. One of the biggest hurdles for women starting a business is getting financing, but e-commerce changed the game. The cost of starting an online store is a fraction of the cost of setting up an offline business, like 94% less, according to one publication from Alibaba, China's e-commerce giant. Additionally, tech-based business offer more flexibility and autonomy, helping women balance home responsibilities and work. This has encouraged many more women to become entrepreneurs. According to a government-wide paper on gender equality and women's development, about 55% of new internet businesses are being founded by women. The picture we painted so far is bright, full of achievement. But the reality, as always, is more nuanced. Beneath the surface of progress lies significant inequalities within the female population itself. While some women are reaching new heights, others remain trapped. One of the most terrifying cases in recent years is this Qing woman in Xuzhou. She was exposed through a viral TikTok video in 2022, wearing thin clothes in freezing winter, chained and confined to a doorless shack. It was later revealed she was a victim of human trafficking and had given birth to 8 children. It's unthinkable this happened not in some remote outpost, but in an ordinary village in eastern China, with the villagers apparently aware of it and allowing it to continue. The tragedy also underscores a deeper issue. The legal system falls short in protecting women. The maximum penalty for buying a woman in China is a mere 3 years. Maximum. For comparison, trafficking an endangered animal can result in over 10 years in jail. Even when victims of human trafficking file for divorce, the courts often rule against them, saying that having stayed with a man sufficed as evidence of good marriage. While egregious human rights abuses like this might be rare, discrimination against women in the workplace is far more pervasive. You know which group sits at the bottom of the hiring list in China? Married women without children. Why? Because companies see a looming maternity leave as a loss of productivity and a financial burden, so avoiding hiring these women in the first place. In a 2022 Women's Workplace Status Survey, 61% of women reported being asked about their marital and childbearing status during job interviews. It's also an open secret that many female employees are even asked to sign a special agreement, promising not to get pregnant for a certain number of years. Breaking this promise could lead to being fired, often without compensation. To be fair, laws in China ban gender and pregnancy-related discrimination in employment. But the reality is, even if companies violate these regulations, they rarely face any consequences. The legal process is so complicated and costly to achieve any meaningful outcome. Now, for women in the workforce, they also earn, not surprisingly, less than men, about 67% of what their male counterparts do. And motherhood often comes with a financial penalty. Studies show a 7% drop in hourly pay for mothers of 1 and 17% drop for mothers of 2. What about the females who make it to the top? Despite starting on an equal footing with men in terms of education, only a small percentage of women in China reach the executive ranks, and those who do often lead less influential functional lives. They also lag behind women in other countries when it comes to reaching the top. So, what's holding them back? There are many contributing factors, from workplace biases to the infamous old boys club. But one aspect is particularly pervasive in China: the deeply ingrained cultural perceptions about a woman's role in the society. Yes, women are encouraged to join the workforce. Their economic contributions are celebrated. Yet, fundamentally, the traditional expectations from a woman remain unchanged. They're expected to marry up and take care of the family. It's telling that in China, the word leftover isn't usually used for food, but for unmarried women over 30. Somehow, no matter how successful you are professionally, without marriage, you are incomplete, as if life is meaningless without a marriage. Living in a society with such narrative, it kills the ambition of many young women, consciously or unconsciously, leaving fewer willing to compete. And for those who stay competitive, they often face a double shift. The expectation to manage household duties and childcare still falls heavily on their shoulders. Official data reveals that in 76% of the families, mothers are the primary caregivers, handling everything from cooking to schoolwork to driving kids to school. On average, it takes a woman 136 minutes each day on unpaid domestic work. So, years of pregnancy and recovery, plus hours of chores every day that their male partners don't have to do. It's no wonder that only a very handful manage to break through the highest echelons of power. Working on this essay, I've also read gender equality reports from different countries over the decades. While this video primarily focuses on women in China, I found many challenges are universal. From the lack of female leadership positions to the disproportionate burden of unpaid care work. These are not isolated issues, but systematic barriers that limit women's full participation in society. The journey towards equality is long, but the progress made in last century gave us reason to hope. More and more, we're realizing women's increased participation isn't just about fairness. It's essential for a thriving and vibrant society. When women hold up half the sky, the whole world shines brighter